The massive space station floating near the edge of the galaxy hummed with activity. Ships from dozens of different worlds docked at its ports every day. Inside the main council chamber, representatives from many alien species gathered around, a circular table that could fit a small building. Ambassador Hyun-woo Kim sat in his assigned chair, wearing his best diplomatic uniform. His face showed nothing but calm politeness as he listened to the aliens talk about his people. Next to him, Da-Eun Park wrote notes in her tablet while keeping her expression neutral. On his other side, Tae-min Lee sat perfectly still, watching, everything with sharp eyes. The chamber was huge, with tall ceilings that disappeared into shadows. Strange lights floated in the air, casting different colors depending on which species had turned them on. The air recycling system worked hard to keep breathable atmosphere for everyone, creating a constant low hum in the background. "The human problem continues to grow," said Quillnash, the Veltari representative. The crystal being's body caught light and threw it around the room in sharp patterns. "They expand too quickly. They make friends with dangerous species. They do not follow proper protocols." Hyun-woo smiled and nodded. "We appreciate the Council's concern. Humanity has always believed in peaceful expansion and making new friends." Several aliens made sounds that might have been laughter. The Kethmoran, delegate hive speaker Zek, clicked its huge bug-like jaws together. "Peaceful, yes, but also unpredictable. You make alliances with predator species. You share technology too freely. Some of us wonder if you understand the natural order." "We believe all species have value," Da-Eun said softly, not looking up from her notes. "Our cultural studies show that cooperation benefits everyone." Bom Yi-choi sat behind the main delegates, pretending to be a junior aide. She looked young and harmless, taking pictures with what appeared to be a simple camera. The aliens ignored her completely, which was exactly what she wanted. Her real job was intelligence gathering, and she was very good at it. The Feltorian representative oozed forward in its special chair. Prime Slithervex was essentially a giant slug, leaving a trail of slime wherever it went. The humans claim to be peaceful, but they build many ships. They establish colonies in strategic locations. They ask too many questions about our defense systems. Curious minds, Hyun-woo replied with another smile. Humans are naturally interested in learning about our neighbors. What the aliens did not know was that every human in the room was a veteran of terrible wars. Hyun-woo had commanded troops during the Battle of New Seoul, where human forces held off an invasion for 3 months with limited supplies. Da-Eun had spent 2 years behind enemy lines during the Titan Rebellion, learning how different species thought and fought. Tae-min had survived the Europa Ice Wars, where he single-handedly destroyed an entire enemy battalion. Bom Yi looked even younger than her 25 years, but she had been gathering intelligence since she was 18. She spoke 12 alien languages and could hack into most known computer systems. So Jin Han, sitting at the far end of the table with communication equipment, appeared to be a simple technical assistant. In reality, she was one of the youngest, tactical geniuses in human space. "We have been watching human expansion for 3 years now," Quillnash continued. "At first, we expected resistance to our territorial claims. Instead, you negotiate. You compromise. You give up valuable systems without fighting." "Diplomacy works," Hyun-woo said. "Why fight when we can talk?" The aliens exchanged looks that suggested they thought humans were either very wise or very weak. Most of them clearly believed it was weakness. Hive speaker Zek leaned forward, its compound eyes reflecting the floating lights. "Perhaps we worried about nothing. Your species seems more interested in trade than conquest, more focused on exploration than expansion. We find the galaxy is big enough for everyone," Tae-min said quietly. So Jin looked up from her equipment and smiled. "The communication networks you've shared with us are very helpful. We've learned so much about how different species stay in touch across long distances." What she did not mention was that human technicians had been studying those networks for 3 years, learning how to intercept, decode, and if necessary, disable them completely. The meeting continued for several hours. The aliens discussed human activities throughout the galaxy with casual dismissal. They talked about human colonies as if they were temporary inconveniences. They mentioned human trade routes as if humanity had no right to use them. Prime Slither. Vex activated a holographic display showing human settlements. These colonies are positioned too close to our sacred spawning worlds. They will need to be relocated. We can certainly discuss boundary adjustments, Hyunwoo replied politely. Not adjustments, Quillnash said firmly. Relocations, complete. Evacuations. We have been patient, but patience has limits. Dayun stopped writing notes for just a moment, then continued as if nothing had happened. Bamyi's camera clicked steadily, recording everything. The wind singer Null, a representative of the gaseous Zephyrian species, spoke in musical tones that the translators converted to words. The council grows tired of accommodation. Perhaps it is time for more direct action. We hope that won't be necessary, Hyunwoo said. Humans prefer peaceful solutions. Of course you do, Hive speaker Zek replied. You have no choice. As the meeting ended, the aliens filed out in groups, continuing their conversations about human weakness and the need for stronger action. They spoke as if the humans were not there, or as if they did not matter. Hyunwoo gathered his papers slowly, maintaining his calm expression until the last alien had left. Then he looked at his team. Analysis? He asked quietly. They're planning something, Daun said. The body language, the way they kept looking at each other during certain topics. This wasn't just a discussion. Agreed. Taemin nodded. This felt like a final evaluation before action. Bamyi put away her camera. I got everything. Their fleet positions, their communication protocols, even some interesting personal details about their leaders. So Jin checked her equipment. I've been monitoring their private channels during the meeting. They're scheduling another session in 2 weeks. They called it a final assessment of human compliance. Hyunwoo was quiet for a long moment. For 3 years, humanity had followed the polite doctrine. They had been patient, diplomatic, and accommodating. They had hoped that showing good faith would lead to genuine peace. It was becoming clear that the aliens saw human politeness as weakness. They thought diplomacy meant humans could not fight. They believed compromise indicated fear. They were very, very wrong. Send a priority message to Earth, Hyunwoo said finally. Tell Fleet Command that the diplomatic experiment may be ending soon. Tell them the gloves might need to come off. As they left the chamber, none of the humans looked worried. They had spent 3 years learning everything they could about every species in the Council. They had mapped defensive positions, studied cultural weaknesses, and positioned their assets carefully. The aliens thought they were dealing with a weak, peaceful species that would submit to any demand rather than fight. They were about to learn the difference between choosing peace and being incapable of war. 2 weeks passed quickly. When the council meeting was called again, everything felt different. Hyunwoo noticed the changes as soon as he approached the space station. Veltari war spheres hung in space around the station like deadly ornaments. Their crystal surfaces reflected starlight in sharp, threatening patterns. Kethmaran assault ships patrolled the docking bays, their insect-like forms moving with military precision. Inside the station, armed guards from various species lined the corridors. They watched the human delegation with obvious suspicion, hands resting on strange alien weapons. The message was clear without anyone saying a word. When Hyunwoo and his team entered the council chamber, they found their seats had been moved. Instead of sitting at the main table as honored delegates, their chairs were now positioned in what looked like a defendant's dock. The setup was designed to make them feel small and powerless. Da-un noticed immediately. Her training in alien cultures told her this was a deliberate insult, a way to show that humans were no longer considered equals. She kept her expression neutral, but her mind was already cataloging the implications. Taemin counted the guards without moving his eyes. 12 visible, probably more hidden. Different species, different weapons, different tactical approaches, needed for each one. His military experience automatically calculated distances, cover positions, and escape routes. Bamyi carried the same simple camera as before, but today she also had other equipment disguised as basic aid tools. Her intelligence training had taught her to always have backup plans for backup plans. So Jin set up her communication equipment in the new location. To watching aliens, she looked frustrated by the change in seating. In reality, she was establishing encrypted connections to human assets throughout the galaxy. Quill Nash stood at the center of the chamber, its crystalline form more imposing than before. The Council has reached a decision regarding the human situation, it announced without any preliminary discussion or diplomatic pleasantries. No greeting. No recognition of human diplomatic status. No pretense of negotiation. Humanity's expansion has gone too far, Quill Nash continued. Your species will be relocated to a single star system under Council supervision. This decision is final and not open to discussion. Hyun Woo started to stand. Honored Council members, surely we can... There is nothing to discuss. Hive speaker, Zek interrupted, its mandibles clicking with obvious satisfaction. Your compliance is expected, not requested. Your military will be disbanded. Your colonies will be evacuated. Your trade agreements are void. Dayun stopped taking notes. The pen remained motionless in her hand as she stared at the alien delegate. 3 years of careful relationship building, and they were being treated like conquered subjects. As a demonstration of Council authority, Prime Slithervex announced, activating a holographic display. Enforcement measures have already begun. The hologram showed scenes that made every human in the room go very still. Human civilians were being loaded onto transport ships. Families were being separated. Children were crying as they were carried away from their parents by alien soldiers. This footage is from Colony 7, Vex continued with obvious pleasure. We wanted to show our commitment to efficient relocation procedures. Bomyi felt something, cold and dangerous, settle in her chest. These were not military targets or strategic positions, these were families, children, innocent people who had never hurt anyone. The process will be completed across all human settlements within 72 hours, Quill Nash stated. Resistance will be met with appropriate force. The chamber was completely silent, except for the sound of alien breathing and the quiet hum of life support systems. The human delegation sat frozen, watching images of their people being treated like cargo. Hyunwoo stared at the holographic display for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was very quiet. Those children in the footage. How old are they? Does it matter? Quill Nash replied dismissively. Hyunwoo reached into his jacket very slowly. His fingers found a small device that looked like a simple communication tool. It was actually an Earth Defense Corps emergency beacon, something that had never been used in 3 years of diplomatic relations. His fingers moved across its surface with practiced precision. The device beeped once very softly. Sir? Sojin whispered, recognizing the sound. Hyunwoo looked up at the council for the first time since the footage began playing. His diplomatic smile was completely gone. His polite expression had vanished. What remained was something the aliens had never seen before. You took our children, he said, his voice barely louder than a whisper. You actually took our children. The temperature in the chamber seemed to drop. Several aliens shifted uncomfortably in their seats, though they were not sure why. Your offspring will be relocated safely, Quill Nash said, but its voice lacked the confidence it had shown moments before. Relocated, Taemin repeated slowly as if testing the word. Is that what you call kidnapping now? Hive speaker Zek's compound eyes focused on the humans with growing uncertainty. Something had changed in the last few minutes, but the alien representatives could not identify what it was. Dayun closed her notebook with a soft snap. The sound seemed louder than it should have been in the quiet chamber. 3 years, she said conversationally. 3 years of cultural exchange, trade negotiations, and friendship treaties. 3 years of studying your weaknesses, Bomyi added, still looking like a harmless young aide. Sojin looked up from her communication equipment. Admiral Woojin Park reports the 7th Fleet has moved into position. Admiral Jae-sung Kim confirms the 12th Fleet is ready. Admiral Hyejin Lee says the 3rd Fleet is eager. The chamber erupted in confused sounds from various alien species. Clicking, chittering, musical tones, and electronic static filled the Air's representatives tried to understand what they were hearing. Impossible, Hive Speaker Zek declared. Our intelligence shows your fleet positions clearly. You have perhaps a dozen ships total. Your intelligence, Taman said with a cold smile that looked nothing like the polite diplomatic expressions they had seen before, shows exactly what we wanted you to see. Quillnash's crystalline form flickered with confusion and growing alarm. What are you saying? Hyunwoo stood slowly, and as he did, his entire presence seemed to change. The polite ambassador disappeared, replaced by someone who had once held impossible positions against overwhelming odds. Someone who had made hard decisions and lived with the consequences. I'm saying, he replied quietly, that for 3 years, humanity has been operating under what we call the polite doctrine. It was an experiment in diplomatic integration with the galactic community. He looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of alien representatives who were suddenly unsure of everything they thought they knew. The experiment, Hyunwoo continued, is now concluded. Alarms began sounding throughout the space station. Emergency lights flashed in patterns that meant different things to different species, but universally indicated immediate danger. So Jin smiled pleasantly at the chaos. Oh, that's probably Fleet Admiral Minho Jang announcing our arrival. He has a tendency toward dramatic timing. Through the chamber's massive viewports, dark shapes began appearing against the stars. Ships materialized from nowhere, dropping, stealth systems that the Council had not known existed. Each vessel was larger than anything in the combined Council fleets. You wanted to see human ships, Bomyi said cheerfully. Well, here they are. The breaking point had been reached. The polite doctrine was officially over, and the galaxy was about to learn what humans were really capable of when they stopped being diplomatic. The change in the human delegation was immediate and terrifying. It happened so quickly that the alien representatives barely had time to process what they were seeing. Taemin Lee shifted in his chair, and suddenly he was no longer a diplomatic liaison. Every movement became precise and calculated. His eyes swept the chamber, cataloging threats and opportunities with the efficiency of someone who had survived impossible battles. Guard positions, weapon types, structural weak points, exit strategies. His mind processed everything in seconds. Da-Yun Park placed both hands flat on the table in what looked like a peaceful gesture. The aliens did not realize that this position put her within reach of 3 concealed weapons and gave her perfect leverage for several close combat techniques. Her earlier note-taking had not been random either. She had been mapping the chamber's acoustics and identifying which sounds would best disorient different alien species. Bomyi Choi tilted her head slightly, and her simple camera suddenly became something much more sophisticated. The device had been recording everything for 3 years, but now it was also broadcasting on all Council emergency frequencies. Every word spoken in this chamber was being transmitted to human intelligence networks throughout the galaxy. So Jin, Han, the young aide with communication equipment, revealed that her setup was actually a tactical command center. The innocent-looking panels and screens were coordinating with human fleets that, according to all Council intelligence reports, did not exist. Ambassador Hyunwoo Kim stood slowly, and the diplomatic mask fell away completely. The polite smile vanished. The accommodating posture straightened into something that commanded attention. This was not the same man who had spent 3 years making compromises and seeking peaceful solutions. Honored Council members, he began, and his voice carried new authority that made several aliens step back involuntarily. I need to clarify something important. For the past 3 years, humanity has been operating under what we call the polite doctrine. Quillnash's crystalline form flickered with growing panic. What do you mean? The polite doctrine, Hyunwoo continued calmly, was an experimental approach to galactic diplomacy. We wanted to see if peaceful cooperation was possible. We hoped that showing good faith would lead to mutual respect and genuine friendship. He paused, looking around the chamber at alien faces that were beginning to show real fear. The experiment has concluded. The results were disappointing. So Jin looked up from her tactical displays with an expression of cheerful professionalism. Admiral Woojin Park reports that the 7th Fleet has completed their flanking maneuver. Admiral Jae-Sung Kim confirms that the 12th Fleet is in attack position. Admiral Hai-Jin Lee wants me to tell you that the Third Fleet is extremely eager to begin operations. The chamber exploded in panicked sounds. Clicking mandibles, musical wails, electronic screeching, and liquid bubbling filled the air as representatives from dozens of species tried to process what they were hearing. "This is impossible," Hive Speaker Zek declared, its compound eyes wide with shock. "Our intelligence clearly shows your fleet capabilities. You have minimal military assets." "Your intelligence," Taemin replied with a smile that was not friendly at all, "has been carefully managed for 3 years. You see exactly what we wanted you to see. Nothing more." Dayun opened her notebook again, but now she was reading from different pages the aliens had never seen before. "Veltari Crystal Cities," she read in a conversational tone. "Population centers built around harmonic resonance. Primary defenses include orbital mirror arrays and plasma shields. Both systems have a fatal resonance frequency of 23.7 terahertz. We discovered this weakness 18 months ago." Quill Nash's light dimmed to almost nothing. "How could you possibly know that?" "Kethmaran hive clusters," Dayun continued without answering, "rely on pheromone-based command and control systems. Synthetic pheromone compound K47 causes complete hive confusion and breakdown. We've been manufacturing it in industrial quantities for 2 years." Hive Speaker Zek made a sound like breaking glass. "Feltorian slime colonies," Dayun read on, "maintain atmospheric balance through specialized processors. These can be destabilized by introducing trace amounts of sodium chloride. Basic salt, essentially. Very cheap, very effective." Prime Slithervex began secreting stress fluids uncontrollably, leaving puddles around its chair. Bomyi stood and removed her diplomatic jacket, revealing body armor underneath that looked nothing like standard protective gear. Zephyrian gas form beings require specific atmospheric pressure to maintain coherence. Sudden pressure changes cause temporary dispersal. We have atmospheric manipulation devices positioned around all Zephyrian worlds. "This is madness," Windsinger Null wailed in musical tones that sounded like a funeral dirge. "You cannot know all of this. You are a peaceful species." Ambassador Hyunwoo's laugh was genuinely frightening. It contained no humor, only cold amusement at alien ignorance. "Peaceful?" he repeated. "You took our children and called us peaceful?" He gestured to his team with casual pride. Taemin Lee, survivor of the Europa Ice Wars, where he held a defensive position against a full mechanized division for 6 days using nothing but improvised explosives and tactical genius. Kill count, 847 confirmed. Taemin nodded politely. To the shocked aliens, Daeun Park, cultural anthropologist and veteran of the Titan Rebellion. She spent 2 years behind enemy lines, learned 17 different ways to weaponize alien psychology, and once convinced an entire enemy fleet to surrender by broadcasting the right combination of sounds. Dayun smiled pleasantly. Bomyi Choi, intelligence specialist who infiltrated the Proxima command structure so thoroughly that she ran their entire defense network for 3 months before they realized she was not one of them. During that time, she systematically weakened every major installation in the system. Bomyi gave a small wave. So Jin-Han, Hyunwoo continued, became the youngest person in human history to plan and execute a successful planetary siege. The Proxima campaign, which I believe your files list under human atrocities that must never be allowed to happen again. So, Jin looked up from her communications equipment and smiled brightly. I was 19. I've learned a lot since then. The chamber had gone completely silent except for the increasingly urgent sounds of alien breathing and the growing number of emergency alerts echoing through the station. And myself, Hyunwoo concluded quietly. Survivor of the Battle of New Seoul, where human forces held off overwhelming invasion for 3 months. I personally commanded the final defensive action that saved 2 million civilians. He walked to the center of the chamber, hands clasped behind his back in a pose that looked relaxed but ready. Every human in this room has survived wars that would horrify your species. We have fought battles that your kind cannot imagine. We have made Decisions that haunt our dreams. Through the viewports, more human ships continued to appear. Massive dreadnoughts materialized from stealth systems that violated several supposed laws of physics. Carrier groups emerged from hiding places inside asteroid fields. Battle fleets dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation. For 3 years, Hyunwoo said quietly, "We have been polite, we have been diplomatic, we have compromised, negotiated, and sought peaceful solutions to every problem." His voice dropped even lower, but somehow every alien in the chamber heard every word clearly. "You mistook our politeness for weakness. You confused our diplomacy with inability. You thought that because we chose peace, we were incapable of war." The emergency alarms were screaming now. Status displays throughout the chamber showed Council fleets in full retreat or complete surrender. The tactical situation had shifted from Council superiority to human dominance in less than 10 minutes. "You were wrong," Hyunwoo concluded simply. And in that moment, every alien representative in the chamber understood that they had made a terrible, possibly fatal mistake. The humans had not been learning how to be peaceful. They had been learning how to end wars quickly and completely. The mask had fallen. The real humanity was finally visible, and it was absolutely terrifying. The emergency alarms throughout the space station were now screaming in 17 different alien languages. Warning lights flashed in patterns that meant immediate evacuation to some species and prepare for death to others. The Council chamber had become the center of a galaxy-wide crisis in less than 15 minutes. Fleet Commander Grix of the Veltari War Spheres appeared on the main communication screen, his crystalline form flickering with absolute panic. The proud warrior who had been so confident just hours ago now looked like he was about to shatter into a million pieces. "Council emergency protocol," he broadcast on all frequencies. "We are detecting massive human fleet movements throughout the sector. Ships are materializing from impossible locations. They're coming out of asteroid fields, gas giant atmospheres, even from inside planetary rings. How many fleets do they have?" So Jin Han looked up from her tactical display with the same bright smile she had worn while pretending to be a simple aide. "Currently active in this sector? 47 full battle fleets. Would you like a detailed breakdown by ship class, armament level, and strategic capability?" Hive Speaker Zek's mandibles opened and closed several times before any sound came out. 47? Our intelligence indicated you had perhaps 12 ships total across your entire species." "Oh, those," Taemin said dismissively, as if discussing weather reports. "Those were our diplomatic escort vessels. We thought it would be rude to bring our actual military to peace talks." The chamber shuddered as something truly massive moved past the station. Through the massive viewports, Council members could see human dreadnoughts emerging from stealth systems that should not have existed. Each ship was larger than the Council's most powerful vessels, and there were dozens of them. Da-eun continued reading from her notebook as if she were discussing lunch plans rather than the destruction of galactic civilization. The HDFS Incheons. Fury, that's the large one currently positioning itself off your starboard side, carries enough kinetic penetrators to turn a continent into glass. Each projectile travels at 40% of light speed. Several aliens made sounds of distress. The HDFS Busan's Revenge specializes in electronic warfare. They can take control of your ships faster than your crews can activate lockdown procedures. Your own vessels will turn their weapons on each other before you realize what's happening. Prime Slithervex was now leaving stress fluid puddles that were spreading across the chamber floor. "And the HDFS Soul's Promise?" Da-eun continued with academic interest. "Well, that one is special. It was designed specifically for sterilizing slime-based life forms. The weapons are comprehensive." Admiral Min Ho Jang's voice suddenly filled the chamber, broadcast from the human fleet. His tone was casual, almost bored. "All Council defensive installations have been mapped and targeted. Their fleet positions are logged. Funny thing, most of their ships are running on skeleton crews because they thought this was just a diplomatic meeting." Bomyi activated a 3-dimensional holographic display that showed the tactical situation in perfect detail. Red dots representing Council forces were vastly outnumbered by blue dots showing human positions. The display was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. As you can see, honored council members, she said cheerfully, you are currently surrounded by approximately 2,400 human vessels of various classes. Your combined fleets in this sector total 847 ships, most of which are not prepared for combat operations. Furthermore, Taman added helpfully, our analysis indicates that 67% of your vessels are currently running on minimal crews because your commanders expected a routine diplomatic function. They're not prepared for battle. The Korth delegate Shellbearer Prime spoke in a voice that trembled with terror. What do you want from us? What are your demands? Ambassador Hyun-woo walked to the center of the chamber, his posture relaxed but commanding absolute attention. Every alien eye was fixed on him, waiting for words that might determine whether their civilization survived the next hour. Our demands are very simple, he said calmly. First, every human child, every human civilian, every human citizen currently in council custody will be returned immediately and completely unharmed. This is not negotiable. Second, Daeun continued, closing her notebook with a soft snap, the council will issue a formal apology for this attempted genocide and pay full reparations to every affected colony and family. Third, Sojin added while monitoring fleet communications, the Council will recognize humanity's absolute sovereign right to exist, expand, and trade without interference from any galactic authority. And fourth, Bamyi concluded, the Council will remember this lesson. Humans offered you peace, trade, friendship, and cooperation. We came to you with open hands and honest intentions. You chose to threaten our children instead. Ambassador, Hyunwoo stopped pacing and faced the Council directly. You have exactly 1 hour to comply with these demands. And if we refuse? Quillnash asked, though its voice barely registered above a whisper. Hyunwoo shrugged casually. Then you will discover why the galaxy's most successful predator species spent thousands of years fighting itself for practice. Sojin looked up from her communications array. Admiral Woojin Park asks if he should begin target acquisition on Council homeworlds. Admiral Jae-sung Kim wants to know if we're implementing total war doctrine. Admiral Hee-jin Lee says her crews are getting impatient. Tell them to maintain positions, Hyunwoo replied. We're giving the Council 60 minutes to make the right choice. Windsinger Null made sounds like a crying wind. This is impossible. You cannot have prepared for this. 3 years ago you barely had space travel. 3 years ago, Bamyi corrected gently. We had just finished fighting the bloodiest war in our planet's history. We had recently developed faster-than-light travel. We had also just discovered we were not alone in the universe. Do you know what a species does? Daeun asked conversationally. When it discovers that the galaxy is full of potential threats? They prepare. Taemin answered his own rhetorical question. They study. They plan. They position assets. They develop contingencies for every possible scenario, including the scenario where peaceful coexistence proves impossible, Hyunwoo added quietly. Admiral Minho Jang's voice filled the chamber again. 57 minutes remaining. Council fleets are attempting to organize defensive formations, but they're having communication difficulties. Communication difficulties? Hive speaker Zek asked in confusion. Sojin smiled innocently. Oh, we've been inside your communication networks for 2 years. We can turn them on or off whenever we want. Right now, we're letting your ships talk to each other just enough to coordinate surrender procedures. The holographic display updated, showing Council vessels across the sector broadcasting surrender codes. Ship after ship was standing down, recognizing the hopelessness of their situation. 32 minutes remaining, Admiral Jang announced. Council homeworld defense systems are powering down. They seem to understand the situation. Ambassador Hyun-woo looked around the chamber at alien faces showing various expressions of shock, terror, and dawning comprehension. For 3 years, he said quietly, we have been learning everything about you. Your technologies, your cultures, your fears, your weaknesses. We have been positioning assets, developing strategies, and preparing for every contingency. You thought diplomacy was weakness, Daeun added. You mistook patience for inability. You confused politeness with powerlessness, Taemin continued. You assumed that because we chose peace, we were incapable of war, Bomyi concluded. Sojin looked up from her displays. 15 minutes remaining. All human civilians have been released and are being returned to their families. The Council's formal apology is being drafted. Reparation calculations are in progress. The reckoning was complete. The galaxy had learned what humanity was truly capable of when forced to abandon diplomacy, and every alien in the chamber understood that they had survived this encounter only because humans still preferred peace to war. For now. 53 minutes after Ambassador Hyunwoo had given his ultimatum, Council vessels throughout the galaxy began broadcasting surrender codes. The speed of compliance was remarkable. 3 years of careful intelligence gathering had given humanity perfect knowledge of Council command structures, and every alien leader understood exactly how hopeless their situation had become. 6 hours later, every human civilian was safely returned. Medical reports confirmed that none had been harmed during their brief captivity, though the psychological impact of the experience would take longer to heal. The efficiency of the return operation impressed even human military commanders. The Council's formal apology was broadcast across all diplomatic channels within 12 hours. The document was comprehensive, acknowledging that the attempted forced relocation constituted genocide and accepting full responsibility for the crisis. Reading it aloud took 47 minutes in standard Galactic. Reparation negotiations began immediately. Human accountants who had spent 3 years studying alien economic systems presented detailed invoices that made even the most commercially minded species examine their budgets with concern. The calculations were precise, fair, and completely non-negotiable. 3 days after what historians would later call the diplomatic incident, the Council reconvened in a very different atmosphere. The same chamber, the same seats, but everything had changed fundamentally. The human delegation now sat at the head table, their status as equals no longer questioned by anyone. Security guards from various species still patrolled the corridors, but now they avoided eye contact with human personnel and maintained respectful distances. Ambassador Hyunwoo had returned to his diplomatic demeanor, but there was a new quality to his politeness. Like a perfectly maintained sword that everyone knew was very sharp. His smile was genuine, but it carried an undertone that suggested diplomacy was a choice, not a necessity. The polite doctrine has been updated, he announced, to the assembled delegates, many of whom were new representatives. Several previous council members had apparently developed sudden health problems requiring immediate retirement. Humanity will continue to pursue peaceful coexistence with all species, Hyunwoo continued. We believe in cooperation, trade, cultural exchange, and mutual respect. However, certain actions will now result in an immediate suspension of diplomatic protocols. Dayun stood and read from an official document that had been prepared by the finest diplomatic and military minds on Earth. Specifically, any threat to human civilians will be considered an act of war. Any attempt at forced relocation will be considered genocide. Any attack on human colonies or vessels will be met with immediate military response. Most importantly, Taman added with his characteristic directness, any action taken against human children will result in what we call total war doctrine. This involves the complete dismantling of the aggressor's military capabilities, government structure, and ability to threaten others ever again. Sojin activated a holographic display showing human fleet positions throughout the galaxy. The blue dots were everywhere: hidden bases, mobile fleets, stealth installations, deep space monitoring stations. The network was vast and sophisticated. As you can see, she said cheerfully, humanity has been quite thorough in our preparations. These positions represent 3 years of careful strategic planning. Quillnash, whose crystalline form had dimmed considerably since the incident, asked the question that every alien representative was thinking. How long have you been planning this level of military deployment? Since first contact, Bomyi replied with her usual pleasant smile. Did you really think a species that had fought planet-wide wars for thousands of years would meet alien civilizations without being prepared for every possibility? The new Keth Moran representative, a smaller individual called Hive Speaker Nex, clicked its mandibles nervously. The humans we have been trading with throughout our territories, the ones working in our facilities. Mostly military intelligence operatives, yes, Hyunwoo confirmed without apology. Though I should mention that they genuinely enjoyed the cultural exchange programs. Humans are naturally curious about other species, and the learning experience was valuable for everyone involved. So the past 3 years of trade agreements, cultural exchanges, and friendship treaties, asked Shellbearer II, the new Korth delegate, were they all deception? Not at all, Daun assured them earnestly. Every agreement was genuine. Every cultural exchange was sincere. Every friendship was real. Humans prefer peace to war, cooperation to conflict, and building to destroying. But you were also preparing for war the entire time, observed Windsinger Echo, the replacement Zephyrian representative. Always, Taemin confirmed without hesitation. Peace through strength is a fundamental human concept. We prepare for war so that we can maintain peace. Ambassador Hyunwoo stood and addressed the chamber directly. The Council is welcome to continue governing galactic affairs. Humanity has no desire to rule over other species or impose our will on alien civilizations. We simply want to exist freely, expand naturally, and trade peacefully. He paused, and his diplomatic smile took on that new, unmistakable quality. However, any future discussions about the human problem should probably begin with the understanding that there are currently 47 human battle fleets within striking distance of every major council world, and that we have spent 3 years learning exactly how to end each of your civilizations quickly and efficiently. The chamber remained very quiet. Several aliens shifted uncomfortably in their seats, so Jin closed her tactical displays and grinned brightly. But we would much rather be friends. The HDFS Soul's Promise has an excellent diplomatic suite with accommodations for 17 different species. Perhaps we could host the next council meeting? The silence stretched for several moments before Prime Slither Beta, the new Feltorian representative, managed to speak. That would be acceptable. Bom Yi opened a new set of documents, her demeanor shifting back to the helpful aide role she had played so well. Excellent. Now shall we discuss some new trade agreements? Humanity has developed some fascinating technologies over the past 3 years that might benefit everyone. And so, the galaxy settled into a new normal. Trade resumed, cultural exchanges continued, and diplomatic relations proceeded smoothly. The only difference was that now everyone understood the rules clearly. Humanity wanted peace. Humanity preferred cooperation. Humanity enjoyed making friends with alien species and learning about different cultures. But humanity was also very, very good at war. And they had spent 3 years making sure that every species in the galaxy understood both sides of that equation. The Council's official records from that period note only that diplomatic relations with humanity have been clarified and are proceeding within established parameters. Unofficially, it became known as the day an entire galactic government learned that the most dangerous predators are often the ones who choose not to hunt. Human colonies continued to expand. Human trade networks grew larger and more profitable. Human exploration vessels pushed deeper into unknown space, making new discoveries and new friends. And throughout the galaxy, alien species told their children stories about the importance of keeping promises, especially promises made to humans, because everyone now understood that human politeness was not weakness, human diplomacy was not inability, human patience was not powerlessness. It was simply humans being nice. And if humans ever stopped being nice, well, the galaxy had seen what happened next. The lesson was clear, universal and permanent. Never mistake human kindness for human helplessness. The difference between a peaceful human and a hostile human is not capability. It is simply choice, and humans very much preferred to choose peace. As long as that choice was respected, the new understanding was complete, and it would last for generations. Humanity had found its place in the galactic community, not through conquest or submission, but through the simple demonstration that sometimes the most effective diplomacy comes from having the biggest stick and choosing not to use it. Unless someone threatens the children, then all bets are off.